Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1193 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today I'm joined by Brandy. She's 40 years old. She's had type 1 diabetes since she was a sophomore in college, and Brandy brought a little bit of a surprise with her. You'll find out about that in just a minute. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. You know I'm talking to you right now into your ears, and I'm saying to you, go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. They're looking for type 1s and the caregivers of type 1s who are U.S. residents to complete a short survey. That's all they ask. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You will help type 1 diabetes research move forward, and you may just help yourself. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1, touchedbytype1.org, and find them on Facebook and Instagram. Touched by Type 1 is an organization dedicated to helping people living with type 1 diabetes. The free tickets for their annual conference just became available today. Go to touchedbytype1.org, then click on programs, and then annual conference, and register for free. I will see you on September 14th in Orlando, Florida. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. And sure, all CGM systems use transcutaneous sensors that are inserted into the skin and last 7 to 14 days. But the Eversense sensor is inserted completely under the skin, lasting 6 months. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Omnipod 5. Omnipod.com/juicebox. My daughter Arden has been wearing an Omnipod every day since 2006, and it has been a constant friend in her life with diabetes. Consistent, tubeless, and worry-free. Omnipod.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name is Brandy. I am a type 1 diabetic. This is my 20th year dealing with this lovely, lovely disease. And I just wanted to come on here and tell a little bit about my story.
Brandy, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I was 20.
Okay, so you're 40 now. Oh, you're at that interesting split time. You've now had diabetes for as long as you didn't have it.
Yes, exactly, which is a little surreal.
I would imagine. And we are actually joined today by your mother, Lisa.
Yes, hi. This is Lisa. I'm Brandy's mom, and honored to be on this podcast with Brandy to, again, share our story in hopes that perhaps something we might say or that we've been through would be of help to others.
That's wonderful. That is exactly why I started making my blog all those years ago. Lisa, I won't ask you how old you are. I assume you're also 40. So
older than dirt.
Oh, there you go.
We're twins.
Yeah, right. I just assumed that's how it went. So I guess I'd like to start by asking, I think this is what I want to do. Brandy, what do you remember about being diagnosed?
Well, most things are very vivid. There's a few things I think now, like looking back on it, it's a little hazy, but I remember I was in college. So it was my second year in college. I was about 2.5 hours away from home. Mm-hmm. Well, I have family close to the area that is extended family. And I remember just not feeling the best, kind of run down, tired. I was thirsty all the time. And the college that I went to is a very, very, very tiny college. Like, I could call my professor on the phone and not identify myself, and he recognized my voice. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have like a medical clinic. It was only a couple of days a week. I knew I needed to be seen So I kind of just went and saw this nurse one day and was like, hey, I think something's wrong. And she was like, okay, well, go get you a big breakfast. She's like, the doctor will be in at 9. And I was like, well, I had to teach a class that morning as well. So I went and got breakfast, taught the class. I let everybody go early and then went back. And I was the first one to be seen by the doctor. And I just remember I told her kind of what was going on about how I lost 15 pounds in 1 week, thirsty all the time, getting sick on my stomach. She said, here, go pee in a cup. Came back and she's like, hey, sweetie, I don't know how to tell you this, but you have diabetes. And I'm like, no, you can't tell that. I just peed in a cup. That was it. And she's like, who can you call? I'm calling an ambulance where, we're going to take you to the hospital. And so, it kind of started from there. And I still, at that moment, like it hadn't registered. And so like I called my mom who was at work and I started to tell her and I was like, Mom, I have diabetes. And like, I just started sobbing and the doctor just took the phone out of my hand and then talked to my mom. So,
hey, what was your last meal? Do you remember?
Hardee's.
Wait, was it Hardee's? Did you say?
Hardee's breakfast. So I went I go to a very small school. We have one cafeteria and we had one fast food restaurant and it was Hardee's. So I got like a sausage biscuit.
You got cut rate fast food?
Yes.
You didn't even go to one of the big ones?
We didn't have big ones. Literally, Hardee's is the only fast food restaurant in town.
Okay. When you get on the phone with your mom all those years ago, were you being brave right up until that moment?
I don't think I was being brave up until that moment. I think I didn't understand what was going on.
I see.
In shock.
Yeah.
In shock.
Lisa, what did it feel like when do you remember that phone call? Every day, all over my private Facebook group, I see people talking about their love for Omnipod 5. Have you seen people out in the community talking about Omnipod 5 and thought, ooh, I wish I could have that experience with an insulin pump too? Well, guess what? If you've answered yes to that question, you may be experiencing FOMO, fear of missing out on Omnipod. Symptoms of FOMO may include, but are not limited to, fantasizing about jumping into a swimming pool without disconnecting from your pump first, dreaming about walking past doorknobs without getting your tubing caught. Oh, I bet you've been wishing you could wear your outfits that don't have pockets. Well, there's good news for you. You don't have to suffer from FOMO any longer. You can see what you're missing by just trying the Omnipod 5 for yourself. Visit my link, omnipod.com/juicebox to learn more and get started today. Let's get rid of that fear of missing out on Omnipod and get you going on life.
Oh, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here at work and, I answer and then I can hear immediately in her voice that, she's on the verge of tears. And then the doctor gets on the phone and introduces herself. And, this is a small town college with an infirmary. And she says, don't panic, but you need to come up here immediately. I've called an ambulance for your daughter. She has type 1 diabetes. Her blood sugars were, through the roof. And my initial thought is, well, lady, I'm not sure who you are. You're in a little small town college infirmary. And, diabetes, which I was totally ignorant of. No one in our family has diabetes, even type 2. I'm thinking, there's got to be all sorts of tests that have to be run, which you're obviously not capable of doing.
Yeah.
So I was in shock and denial, both. But knew that I had to get there as soon as possible and just found out the hospital they were sending her to and drove like a bat, to meet her there. Just couldn't get there fast enough. And that day is just scorched into my memory. And I'm hoping that over the last 20 years, there have been changes and improvements and with teaching and all the information and instructions that can be given. But 20 years ago,
Lisa, there hasn't been. Don't worry. It's all about the same.
That's my biggest beef. The staff and the endocrinologists, they were all fabulous, but the lack of education and really enlightenment to this life-changing disease that you've now got that can kill you if it's not treated properly. That can't be stressed enough. And we did not get that. We got a Pink Panther coloring book, literally.
Yeah, I never even opened that.
Had writing on it that we went through pretty much on our own. And that was just, and even after the initial week in the hospital, it wasn't near what we needed. And we were fumbling, in the dark trying to figure this out. And then, I have to come back home and leave my daughter 2.5 hours away to fend for herself.
Yeah.
And we still didn't understand the enormity of this at that time.
No, I get you. Also, Brandy, do you have kids now?
I do not.
No. So your mom and I know something that other parents know and people who don't have kids know is that every time your kids text or call or anything, there's this, your heart like takes half a beat. And you're like you're waiting for somebody to say something bad. And I think that people could think, oh, that's you being, I don't know, like dramatic, or, you don't need to be that way, Scott. But I swear to you, every time my kid calls, I think, I hope they're okay. And then when they're okay, then you think, oh, I hope they're happy. And then when you think that, then you're like, I hope people are being kind to them. Like the things you worry about constantly for your children are insane. So when the call comes, and you're like, oh, I hope this is okay. And then it's, no, this is happening. And I like your mom going like, I don't know who you are. You might not know what you're talking about. But at the same time, I'm incredibly impressed at how well that clinic diagnosed you.
Oh, me too. I was shocked, and again, I had no idea. Well, I am also extremely stubborn. I'm sure it has nothing to do with being an only child, but she had told me EMS was coming. And I was like, no, I can have a friend drive me to the hospital. And she's like, I don't think you understand how sick you are. And I'm like, I am walking and I'm talking and I came to you. And so she was like, they're going to come in and take you out on a stretcher. And I'm like, I am a sophomore in college and you want to put me on a stretcher in front of everyone? No, we're not doing this. And so we negotiated for a few minutes. And finally I was able to walk out on my own with one EMS person in front of me and one behind me and get into the ambulance. But, the closest hospital is about 35 minutes away. So I had that fun ride.
Did you guys stop at the Hardee's so the EMS guys could get some lunch?
I mean, I should have asked them if they wanted something.
Hey, you lost 15 pounds in a week?
Yeah. So, and I know it specifically because the guy I was dating at the time, we had gone to his family's house twice, like back-to-back weekends, which were normally alternated. But I weighed on his mom's scale. And when I weighed the Sunday before, I was at one weight. And the next Sunday, I had lost 15 pounds.
Oh.
And on the way back, driving back to the campus, my vision just completely almost went. I've worn glasses and contacts since I was in 7th grade. At this point in time, I took my contacts out and I could see just fine.
Oh.
So it was almost like, I got a little excited at first. I was like, oh my gosh, did my vision just automatically correct itself?
I am turning into a sexy spider that can see well.
And I'm like, this is amazing.
It's happening.
Yeah. And then, they burst my bubble in the hospital. They're like, oh, no, it'll correct itself back. And I was like, oh.
Was 15 pounds a big percentage of your body weight?
At the time, yes.
Yeah.
And she had told me that she was not feeling well and that she was tired. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, most college kids are tired. I knew her schedule, her workload, teaching classes as well, being an RA, just always overachieving. But when she told me about the weight loss, again, I had no light bulb that went off because I knew nothing of diabetes.
Yeah.
But that was enough of a concern that I made her promise she would go to the infirmary the next morning, which she did. But never expecting the diagnosis.
Right. A rapid weight loss makes me think cancer right away. Bleeding and rapid weight loss put my head to cancer. And so, yeah. And, Yeah. Hey, you kept saying you don't know anything about diabetes. Is there any other autoimmune in your family? Like, Lisa, like celiac, or do you have a bipolar uncle or anything going on at all?
Yes and no, in that, again, no other diabetes. As far as the autoimmune, hindsight is wonderful. When Brandy was younger, I believe it was was it 7th or 8th grade, Brandy, when you started when the passing out and they diagnosed you with that? It's one of the two.
I think it was 8th grade or 9th grade.
Yeah. I think it was 8th grade.
What was the diagnosis?
Vasovagal syncope.
No, they don't know why. They didn't call it they didn't talk about POTS back then. Has anybody said that to you since then, or has that gone away?
No.
No, and it's gone away. And they said I might outgrow it. But no, I mean, we didn't have POTS wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, nobody would have talked about that. How about like thyroid stuff, Lisa? Anybody with a thyroid?
No.
No? Wow.
No, I have a nephew who had thyroid cancer a couple of years ago.
But not like hypothyroidism or something like that?
No, but the autoimmune issue with the vasovagal syncope, that was, I often wonder, could that have been some sort of initial something, because it was the autoimmune with her, that it kind of changed her life for a year, a good year.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then went away, but she's, again, with the diabetes, the doctors, the endocrinologist actually said that they thought she had meningitis right before the onset of this, and they thought that could have been a trigger for the onset, and just her pancreas dying.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, like that would be the first time anyone's ever brought that up to me as a connection. But I think that what can happen often is that when this stuff happens and you can't point to a reason why, I think we keep looking for a reason why. And then you start saying like stuff like, oh, she passed out when she was 8. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who knows, right? Like, it sucks. Right. But yeah. Lisa, were you sick before that? Did you have any kind of a virus, an illness?
I'm sorry.
I misspoke. Brandy.
I got diagnosed in February. In July before, I had meningitis. My cousin had meningitis, and of course passed it to me, because I guess we just like to do things as a family. And so I had meningitis and was very, very sick with that. And then looking back on things, there were a few signs, I think, that my pancreas was starting to, kind of go kaput, because I remember going out to eat with my dad in January, and like we went to a Japanese steakhouse and we ate, and I immediately got sick and had to run to the bathroom at the restaurant and throw up. And that happened 2 other times with certain meals, where kind of in that January month where I would eat something and immediately get sick.
Yeah. Lisa, meningitis is a viral infection. And if I had $50 to bet with you, I'd bet that that's what happened. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what the doctor was leaning towards, me a trigger. But, once we got the diagnosis and knew that this was for real, we've been just trying to educate ourselves since on how you live with it, how do you control it, and we've come so far. And I'm so grateful. You mentioned earlier about when something's wrong with your child, you inhale and you don't breathe, and you wait to exhale to know everything's okay. And Brandy having the continuous glucose monitor and the Dexcom app, where she can share with me, to where I don't have to bug her 50 times a day to see what her blood sugars are. That was a life-changing thing for us, in that I can look at it and know that she's okay. Or if it's low, I can just send her and we have an unspoken rule. When it gets low, I don't even have to text her. She sends me a text and says, I'm eating, So
you don't feel like you're bugging her all the time, and she doesn't feel like you're watching her. Yeah. Hey,
yes.
Brandy, how long have you had a CGM? Today's podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. Boasting a 6-month sensor, the Eversense CGM offers you these key advantages: distinct on-body vibe alerts when high or low, a consistent and exceptional accuracy over a 6-month period, and you only need 2 sensors per year. No longer will you have to carry your CGM supplies with you. You won't have to be concerned about your adhesive not lasting, accidentally knocking off a sensor, or wasting a sensor when you have to replace your transmitter. That's right, there's no more weekly or bi-weekly hassles of sensor changes, not with the Eversense CGM. It's implantable, and it's accurate. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Eversense CGM is the first and only long-term CGM. Eversense sits comfortably right under the skin in your upper arm, and it lasts way longer than any other CGM sensor. Never again will you have to worry about your sensor falling off before the end of its life. So if you want an incredibly accurate CGM that can't get knocked off and won't fall off, you're looking for the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
So off and on, my first one I got when I went back to school. I went back to school and got a second master's degree. And when I was there, I did an internship in an endocrinology office, a pediatric endocrinology office. And the Dexcom rep there hooked me up because I had zero insurance and I had never had a CGM before. And that was my first one was the 4.
Oh, you had the G4?
No. I'm sorry. It was the G5. It was the 5.
Okay. And Lisa, did you hear her humble brag that she has 2 master's degrees?
Yeah, I'm glad she did.
Yeah, did you hear her slip that in? She's like,
yeah. I'm glad she did.
So you've had one for, a while now, 6 years.
About 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I did take a year-long break, but no, I've had one for about 6 years now, and it honestly has really helped because my mom would irritate the crap out of me, like asking, "How are you doing? How's your blood sugars? How are you feeling?" And then it would kind of sometimes, if I would tell her what the number is, then she'd be like, "Well, why is it that? Like, did you do this? Did you do that?" And I'm just like, you know what? I have been doing this on my own for how many ever years? I'm good. I got it. And so now her being able to follow, and then we have that little unspoken, if it's high or if it's low, don't ask me about it. I'll tell you that I can be a mean person when it's out of range.
Lisa, I'll tell you how interested I am in this, that you're 20 years into this. She's 40 years old. You worry about her every day?
Every day.
Yeah.
Your children are always your children. It doesn't matter the age. That will never change, So she can be 60 and I'll still worry about her health and her happiness and her well-being. Yes.
Brandy, can I ask you how it makes you feel to hear that?
Oh, I already know that. My mom and I have a very, very, very close relationship.
Why are you yelling at this poor lady then when she's checking on you? What's going on?
Because as I have posted on the podcast, on the Facebook group, when we have high blood sugars and we have low blood sugars, I'm a perfectionist already a little bit. And so I'm already irritated.
Of course.
I'm already upset at myself because I'm low or high, frustrated because I did something wrong or whatever. So I don't want anybody else pointing out that flaw.
I have an episode with Jenny called Altered Minds that goes over how people's brains change when their blood sugars are high and low and how that comes across. Yeah. But Lisa, you know that, right? She's altered when she's high or she's low.
Yes, absolutely. But it still doesn't, change the fact that you're going to check on them.
No, of course. But does it make you, I can explain it for me. So you've been the mom of a person with type 1 for 20 years. I've been the father of somebody with type 1 for 17 years. So you and I are pretty much we're in the same game pretty much. And it took me a while to let Arden be upset and me just sit there and just breathe through it. Like when her blood sugar's high, and I'm like, "Hey, you got to do something." At first, it's like, "Hey, I'm trying to help you." And then you realize this is not the response I would get from her if her blood sugar wasn't high. It's not her fault her blood sugar is high. But it's hard, right? To just sit there like a punching bag and take it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally it is. And that's one reason why I think our unspoken rule works, is because she knows that I know when it's low or when it's real high. So thankfully, she is considerate enough, even in her irritation, that it's going crazy for whatever reason, which often there is no reason. It's a Wednesday at 4 and it decided to drop to 35.
Yeah.
She will send me that, just a text. I'm eating. If it's 3 a.m., I'm eating, because the lows really are the scary
Of course.
ones. That and me having, again, the Dexcom app, to where I can see and I get an alert and I can see her trends, all of that has eased that, to where I'm not having to constantly bug her about it and me be an irritation on top of her trying to deal with this mess that she was given. But it also, by her knowing that I can see that, she just sends me a text, and I trust that she is taking care of it. And that's one thing that I've been very fortunate, is that Brandy she could be a poster child for type 1 diabetes. She's one of these type of people. She is a little on the perfectionist side. She has educated herself. She has gone above and beyond, what the ADA says and all of this, trying to really understand and help herself to where the fact that I know that she is extremely responsible and is going to address any situation that comes up. And in a few conversations I've had with other folks, parents as well, especially if it's a young child who doesn't know, who can't, they really can't be responsible for themselves, so to speak. It's very difficult, and some kids don't take care of themselves like they should. They don't, give themselves their insulin when they should, or just different scenarios that would make me crazy if I was in that. So I count myself lucky that, Brandy is as responsible as she is, and that we do have the pump, that we have that CGM and the app, to where we can share information without being, irritants to each other and just making a situation worse, because stress alone, wreaks havoc.
Of course. I want to say to Brandy, I agree with your mom, but at the same time, I'm impressed that you're doing this even as an adult, like just having the courtesy, if nothing else, to say, I know you're worried about me. I'm handling it. Like it's a big deal, because my daughter's 19 and there are still times where I'm like, hey, are you aware of this? She's like, I know, I'm handling it. I'm like, I know, just please, like, if you just let me know that, or even just like put a check mark or a thumbs up or something on something, so I know you're like moving. You know what I mean? Like it's scary,
Exactly. Well, Scott, I will say this. I did want to touch on this while we were talking, because to me, outside of the diagnosis, it's the second biggest thing that Brandy and I went through. And I think perhaps having experienced that is one reason why she is as considerate as she is, even though, she was before. But, again, Brandy has done everything perfectly. I'm not just bragging on her because she's my child. She's just done all this additional research, and, she keeps her blood sugars in tighter range. In fact, Brandy's A1C this past checkup was what, Brandy?
I finally got to 5.6. So my goal is 5.4.
That's amazing. Also, I love how your mom just set you up for that. Like you were 12 years old and you were at like a dinner party. She's like, go ahead, honey, tell them about your dance award. Do it. Tell them now.
Right. No. Well, I didn't want to misspeak the number, but for a type 1, that's fantastic. Remarkable. So I just say that to kind of confirm, what I'm saying as far as how tight she tries to keep her blood sugars and all. So with that preface, Brandy got sick, and I think I have purged it from my memory, the year, how many years ago it was. It seems like it was about, I don't know.
It was January 2012.
Okay. Right. So we were 10 years into the diabetes and thought we knew what we were doing and doing everything right. And Brandy got sick. She knew the sick day protocols.
Actually, I pulled out the Pink Panther book to double check because I couldn't remember because I didn't get sick that often. I found the book and I have the sick day protocols pulled out to make sure I'm doing everything right. But go ahead.
I even took her. She was living in an apartment here in town. I went and picked her up and took her we went to an urgent care because by the time I got her, everything was closed and her endocrinologist was still up and she loved him so that 2.5 hours away, she was still going to see him, for her checkups every few months. So I take her to urgent care. All right. So doctors see her. We tell them she's type 1 diabetic. She tells them what she had been doing. They give her fluids, do all this stuff. So I'm exhaling now because medical professionals are taking care of my sick daughter. We're okay. And she wants to go back home. And this little voice, in the back of your head says no. And so I'm like, no, I picked you up and you're coming home with me. And she's a grown woman with her own house. Yeah. So, but I took her home and by the grace of God, she's with us today because I did. And unbeknownst to us, and I'm checking on her. She's running a high fever. Still no light bulbs going off because, the doctor just saw her. So I know she's going to be okay. And around midnight, when I went in to check on her, she somehow, from the depths of her soul, was able to whisper, right? She got right in my face and she grabbed my arm and she said, "Please help me." And her face was right in front of mine and the fruitiness of her breath about knocked me down. And somehow in that little thimble of training we had, that triggered me to say, "Oh my God." And I threw her in the car and two-wheeled it into the emergency room. And she was in full-blown DKA. And it looked like some scene out of off of an emergency room TV show with, I'm standing in the corner trying not to freak out or scream. I think I probably even have my hand over my mouth. And there's nurses and 2 doctors in there, and they're working from both sides and trying to get IVs. And I remember the doctor turning around and giving me this death stare saying, "How long has she been in DKA?" And it couldn't even register with me. I'm like, what? And he later apologized for that. But, she was in ICU for 3 days and fortunately recovered from that. From that time on, we are very sensitive to
the illnesses.
Being sick.
Also, yes. Lisa, you got yourself a nice nursing home set up. Yeah. She can't bail on you now, right? This girl's you're stuck. Well, you're stuck. Also, I don't know, Brandy, if you realize that your mom named the episode.
Oh, and what is
I mean, for certain we're calling it Two-Wheeled It.
I think that's accurate because at this point she has two-wheeled it twice in this conversation.
Plus, there's 2 of you here. I just love it. I'm going with that for sure. It's perfect. Yeah, one of you is going to have to say something pretty amazing to get me off of that. So,
but I want to emphasize, if there's any advocacy to be done, it is that initial education. And, someone needs to be standing over you, making you memorize the signs and symptoms of DKA and sick day rules, because you can't emphasize the importance and the severity of that. Yeah. And that wasn't done with us. again, referring back to the Pink Panther coloring book, that's what we had.
I can't believe that magazine didn't help you. But listen, that is, I mean, honestly, the distribution of information back then, like, what did they have? They're going to put it in a book. Like, I always laugh when people say, not laugh, but people say to me sometimes, you should write a book about this. And I'm like, you don't think this is a much easier way of getting this information out here, is recording your voice and making it all available for everyone that owns a cell phone? Like, I think that's better than putting it in a book and hoping someone finds it, buys it, and actually reads it. Exactly. Brandy, I want to get back to you in a second, but I have one more question for your mom first. Lisa, what got you into her room at midnight?
I was just checking on her every hour or two, just to check and make sure that she was, was okay, because her fever was so high, and I was hoping that the, medicine would break it, and I was wanting to make sure she wasn't getting sick on her stomach, that sort of thing. And I had just gone in to make sure that she was all right, and then realized that she was not. And, would the light bulb have gone off had she not been able to?
Oh no, she dies.
Please help me.
She dies overnight if she doesn't get you that. And if you don't go in there, oh my God, Brandy, you can't. There's no home even. You're gonna have to let her move in with you. It's
funny that you say that. I just moved to a new place 2 weeks ago, so we got 21 acres. So we've already said there's plenty of room for her.
You don't have kids because you're busy being making money? Is that what's going on? You're like, I don't have time for kids. I'm piling up wealth and property. Thank you.
We want to start a homestead. So we're going to have lots and lots of little furry animals around here.
Look at you. That's wonderful.
And a tiny house for mom over on the North 40 in the corner.
I was going to say, she earned it. Honestly, Lisa, you're not working, are you?
Yes, I'm at my place of employment now with the do not disturb sign on my door.
Brandy, this is shameful. That lady saved your life 10 years ago.
I know. Well, it's funny. She actually, though, I started, I was apparently talking gibberish also for a while.
I bet.
Mom, she thought I was completely crazy and talking out of my head. And I remember talking about I think I was watching like a Gangland episode or something on True Crime TV or something like that. And I was telling her about it. And she was like, none of what you said made any sense.
Yeah.
None of it. I have no idea where you were going with that. And I was like,
by the way, just so you know how my brain works, had you said speaking tongues, you would have gotten the new episode title, but you said but you said talking gibberish. So I'm sticking with my first thought. So Brandy, listen, I want to know I know it feels like we're moving forward and moving backwards, but just think of this as Pulp Fiction. We're just jumping into the future, and then all of a sudden John Travolta's alive again.
Perfect.
I want to know about that first week in college, trying to figure out how to take care of yourself by yourself with what I assume is needles, insulin, and a meter.
Yes.
Right.
So first off, I will say I was very ignorant and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know that I needed to be concerned or worried or scared. I followed the instructions. Now, I will say, first of all, my endocrinologist that I had was the most amazing, kind-hearted man ever. He was a straight shooter. He was like, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this right now. You're a type 1 diabetic. All the money is in type 2 diabetes. So I am so sorry, but just, you're not going to learn a lot. And I'm like, well, this sucks. Thanks, but okay.
Were you 20 years old? You're still a sophomore, right?
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on. But he's like, the first thing I want to do is get you on a pump. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means. But yeah, so for the first 3 months, I was on insulin injections. I just made my lunch. Like I would pack like a sandwich and some chips. And I remember writing like the carb counts on the baggies. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, I would eat, then take my insulin because there was, at least in my world, there was never any discussion of pre-bolusing or, anything like that. So it was eat, count the carbs, then bolus. So obviously I was going up to probably, 350 or something every day with meals, but that was it. Like there was never, it was very kind of rudimentary.
Isn't it kind of fascinating that coming from like regular MPH, cloudy, like that whole time of insulin, the whole idea was shoot it early so that it's working when you eat. And then they got to, I don't know, they moved up to Humalog, and they, like, the entire profession forgot about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they're just like, oh no, it's faster acting insulin now. So you don't need to, like, those Jenny talks. I don't know how much of the podcast you listen to, but Jenny is so, if I asked her right now, what irritates you about diabetes, in her top 10, she'd say that they call it rapid insulin. It pisses her off because it gives people the idea that it works rapidly. And so it'll just work real quick when you put it in. And, it's just, maybe it's bad branding, or maybe it's just like, sometimes I think it's just the case of the doctors being so impressed with how much faster it works than what they were accustomed to coming from regular, et cetera, that they just forgot about that whole aspect of the timing of the insulin.
Yeah, I was going to say, in all the doctors that I've seen over the years and that sort of thing, like, it's always been referred to as your fast acting insulin. And I don't ever remember a single doctor saying it takes 30 minutes for it to start working in your body.
No.
Like, that was never even mentioned.
No, of course not.
I had to bring it up, actually, whenever I was like, hey, there's newer insulins out now. Can I get on Fiasp, or, can I get on something that's a little bit better?
Do you have any idea how many people think I'm a genius for saying to pre-bolus? I'm like, I'm not a genius. This is pretty freaking common sensey right here. But it's because of the time. Well, but it's because of the time that they spent not living like that. And then when somebody finally says it to them and they see the impact of just balancing, like making the timing of the insulin line up with the action of the carbs, like, they're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I actually, no lie, I have a thank you online this morning. It's actually still in front of me. I can't believe you said this. This lady named Sandy sent me a note. It said, honestly, this podcast is more important to me than seeing my endo. You have helped me tremendously. I was given minimal information by my doctor, didn't even know to bolus before eating. After being a type 1 for 10 years, I was still seeing an endo who is a type 1 who now tells me that my control is better than his. And so that's to Lisa's point earlier. Lisa, I didn't want to break your heart in the first 5 minutes when you were like, I hope that the education's better now. But I'm currently recording a series of episodes that will come out in 2024. And I'm calling them Whistleblower. And they are healthcare professionals whose voices are going to be altered so they can talk about their jobs openly. And each conversation is more depressing than the next one, just so you know.
I could lend comments to that series as well, with other things I've been through myself, where there's just no education, even in the medical profession, that they should know better. If this is your job, it's your responsibility to stay cutting edge and to educate your patients about. So yes, and I'm sad to hear that that's still so often the case, and I think it would be good, Brandy, if you even mention some of the things that you've done that have enabled you to tighten the control on your A1C like you have. The additional stuff that you look at.
Brandy, let's do that. It's Christmas. Your mom has gathered up your aunts and uncles, and it's time for you to tell them about your report card. Okay. But before you do that, I love you guys together. But before you do that, like, let me finish this thought, and then Brandy, we'll jump right to that. It's a great idea. An ER nurse who I spoke to anonymously just yesterday, recorded with her just yesterday. I asked her the question, in the hospital you work, what percentage of people would you be comfortable? And before I could finish the question, she said, I don't trust anyone here to help me with my diabetes. She was talking about in the
1,000% agree with
insane,
that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Scott, that was one of the other incidents after the DKA episode when Brandy got sick, and I again had to take her to the emergency room. We knew that's what she needed. Yeah. We couldn't fool around with urgent care. They literally took us into a room. They started. They were hanging, what was it, like 2 bags there of insulin, Brandy? They were pumping it way too fast.
They did. I had some ketones I needed to get flushed. Sure. And at that point in time, I didn't have an an EMT friend that could come to my house to do it. So I went there and told the doctor what I needed because he was just very flippant, like, you're not in DKA. And I was like, I know, I'm trying to prevent that. It's called preventative medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, let's go. So he gave me a shot. He started an IV, gave me a shot of insulin, hung 2 bags of saline, turned them wide open. They walked out of the room and shut the door.
Literally shut the door and never came back to check on us.
Did that make your blood sugar crash eventually?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was like maybe 30 minutes or so. And I just looked at my mom and I said, hey, do you have snacks in your bag? And she was like, yeah. And I said, well, go ahead and give me a pack of crackers now. I'm going to crash.
They're diluting my blood and my blood sugar is going to crash. Yeah. Lisa, my daughter had to be in the emergency room for some like belly pain while she was away at college, maybe a month ago. And she ended up there twice. So she spent 2 separate times, 12 hours apiece in the ER, 36 hours apart by herself with her roommate. They were scared and she's in pain. They loaded her on morphine and then never once checked her blood sugar ever again, ever, while she was there, both times. No one ever looked at her blood sugar.
Doesn't that infuriate you?
Yeah, the second time I flew to where she was when I sent her back to the hospital. Like the first time after it happened and I got her out of there and I was like, okay, I basically managed her blood sugar from a distance through a proxy, which was her roommate. And that's how I got her through the first 12 hours because she was out of it. And then as soon as I sent her back to the hospital, I literally sent her to the hospital, sat at my computer, bought a plane ticket at 2 a.m, drove across New Jersey to an airport, got on a plane, flew to her, and I was in Georgia by 10 a.m. And she was still in the hospital and they were not helping her still. Like I had to get there and force them to do what they needed to do.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Like I am 40 years old. It does not matter if I get sick and for whatever reason I need an emergency room. I will always have somebody with me. I refuse to go by myself because I know what will happen or what can happen. And I need somebody else who is going to fight for me, and one of the biggest things now is fighting to be able to keep, my CGM and my pump and all this stuff on me and educate them.
I asked that ER nurse when I was recording yesterday, what's your best piece of advice? And she said, don't go to the hospital by yourself.
Exactly.
That was her biggest piece of advice. So, okay. So you're doing, you just pulled a 5.6 A1C. That's pretty terrific. What have your A1Cs been like throughout the 20 years and what improvements did you make along that time to make this number better and better and get you where you wanted to be?
Honestly, technology was the biggest thing. But, I started off, I would say in the high 7s for the first few years with, insulin and just a meter and just trying to figure it out. And honestly, being really bad at carb counting because they don't really I remember they handed me a printout of like common foods and were like, here, this is kind of what the carbs are. Like, there was never any discussion of weighing food or doing this or that. So it was, the diabetes education that I received was, when I went in, she was already ready to go to tell me that I needed to change my diet. And when she asked me what I ate, she was like, oh, you eat really well. And I'm like, yeah. And then, she's like, well, the only thing is you can't have as much fruit as what you normally eat, which that was probably the worst day. Was hear her selling.
You enjoy fruit?
Yeah, I was the one, again, small town college. I had to drive 20 minutes to the grocery store. And so I was the one at like 3 o'clock in the morning would get a fruit craving and would drive 20 minutes to the grocery store to get, whatever. But anyway, so I started off kind of high 7s and I started on Dexcom and I was able to kind of see patterns more. I was able to really kind of dial in insulin better and understand how it works in my body better. And so at that point, then I got down to the 6s.
Let me cut you off for 1 second. You think you were in the 7s for the first 14 years?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
There were some 8s, low 8s.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, very well could have been.
I got a B+. No, I don't remember it that way. I think it was a B. Yeah. And and the teacher wrote a note and said you weren't trying hard enough, Brandy. And so
and actually, you know what's funny? I don't know if anybody else is like this. I feel like there's probably parents who are like this too. Numbers are hard. because we have to deal with numbers all the time. If you ask me, hey, what's your blood sugar? I will rattle off whatever a number is, but it may not be what my last one was because I'm just so used to looking at the numbers all the time that I start getting them kind of mixed up. But
I love this little product called Glucose. It's this, I don't know if you know what it is, but it's this little orb. It's just, you plug it into the wall, you set it up, it pairs to your Dexcom account, and then basically you tell it in what range it should be green. And at least it's just this little bigger than a baseball size thing that goes on your desk. And it just glows green when you're in range, red as you get high, lower. It flashes if you get too low. It turns different colors as you get high. And so it doesn't beep. It doesn't do anything like that. I have one on my desk right now. And to Brandy's point, the numbers are they're constant. Like, I mean, I don't know what Arden's blood sugar is right now. I got to be perfectly honest with you. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Arden's home from college right now. She's still sleeping. And I haven't looked at her blood sugar once today. But when I woke up in the morning, there was a little green globe on my bureau. And I was like, oh, her blood sugar is in the range that I set. And then I got a shower. I've done a bunch of things. I came in here and sit down. And the globe that's on my desk is green. And it's awesome. It is such a lovely thing.
Sounds like a good Christmas present.
I'll tell you, for you, Brandy, you're going to have to set it up if you get it for her.
Hint.
Yeah. Brandy, you're going to have to set it up too, okay? But that's,
I heard that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's cheaper than a house, so I would do it if I was you. But it's just kind of wonderful because even in the middle of the night, like, you know, you wake up, you roll over, you crack your eye open, green light, good. Red light, yep. All right, I'll pick up my phone and see what's going on. It's right. Beautiful.
Right. Well, and Brandy keeps her blood sugars lower than what
you like.
Well, what the ADA says is in normal range.
Don't you worry about that.
I know. I think my range should be this, and so you know the fall to low is a lot closer.
But does it happen though?
Because of that? But she's obviously doing something right because her A1C is so daggone good. I mean, it's almost normal. So I don't fuss about that. It's just that it takes her less time to get to 35 than it would somebody that was keeping their, low range at 100 or above.
Brandy, are you getting to 35 or is this an old fear from your mom?
Old fear from my mom.
Yeah.
I don't get to 35 very often. Now, I mean, every once in a while I'll make a horrible mistake like last Friday. I was having a bad day. You have those days that are just horrible. Mm-hmm. And I accidentally, first of all, I had my glasses on, which is probably part of it. So I wasn't seeing very well. I dosed 20 units of insulin instead of 20 grams of carbs. And so, yeah. But I knew I recognized my mistake right away. And so I just had some orange juice and was sipping on it.
Right.
But for the most part, no, I don't get that low.
Yeah, I keep thinking these are her fears from when you were younger. Well,
it's not been that many years. I mean, we
how many?
When the Dexcom just only reads low. The last number you see is like 42. And then it's just arrows down, red, and says low because it can't read it. That's not been that many years ago, but I will say that since she has been doing the additional stuff she's doing, the pre-bolusing and keeping a tighter, she's staying within her range for, I would say, the last year or two.
Good for you.
That you've really been in that. That's not been the case, because she is doing what she needs to do when it's getting into the 50s or upper 40s. But there are still times. But of course, like I say, the lows are what alarm you. And just the fact that because she is keeping such a tight control and keeping it a little bit lower, she doesn't have a lot of wiggle room there.
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, Brandy, your mom loves you a lot. You know that, right? Yeah. Okay. And this is my doing, isn't it, Brandy? Is this my fault that this is from listening to the podcast, or is it just an idea that you came to on your own? Like I'm gonna go lower and more stable and use less insulin so I don't get as low and as high. Like, where did you get all that from?
Yeah. So, well, I started off gosh, my first kind of interaction with this idea was Dr. Bernstein.
Oh, sure.
And then after that, I found the podcast. And I really don't remember how I came across the podcast, but no, I mean, that was one of the things I noticed immediately whenever I was, when I'm 85, I feel my best. I'm not crabby, I'm not whatever. And it's easier to kind of stay at 85.
Yeah.
With I'm on the Tandem T-Slim
Control IQ
pump. And so,
Control IQ you're using.
Yes. I use Control IQ and absolutely love it. And so because of that, I learned very quickly, I will not treat a low unless I am under 60 because it cuts off my basal. And if I just give it 15 minutes, I'm going to come back up. Like it's going to have a nice little rebound into the 80s and it's great. Yeah. So I don't treat a low unless I'm under 60, which does make my mom a little bit nervous. But part of it is because the technology is so new to us. I mean, I waited a long time to get on this because I was so anal about like control, and giving up control to an algorithm was like, it scared the crap out of me. But
look how well it's going.
It's going so well.
I just looked at Arden's blood sugar because we're talking, and I pulled up her 12-hour graph. Arden hasn't been below 85 or over 116 in 12 hours.
See, it's perfect. Yeah, I'm telling you, the algorithms are great.
Yeah, the straightest line that you could imagine. Wait, are you low carb or no?
No, I'm not. I've gone back and forth. But honestly, if I do really low carb, I have to still bolus for protein.
Of course.
Protein hits me harder.
Yeah. No.
So I kind of go back and forth, but I'm high fruit.
But you mentioned Bernstein. So like so what happened? Like, were you looking for an answer, found people talking about low carb, and then took something from it, but not a low carb lifestyle? Is that about how that happened?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I did start doing some lower carb. I mean, I guess in theory, according to, whatever the people say about what's considered low carb, I guess I am considered low carb because I think I maybe eat, I don't know, anywhere between 45 and 60 grams of carbs a day.
Okay.
But to me, that's not really, I'm not trying to be low carb.
I don't think a person who was eating low carb would consider 60 low. I don't think that at all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I see people post about it sometimes too, talking about it. And they're like 100 carbs a day, under 100 carbs a day is low. And I'm like, okay.
Well, it's just personal, like experience preference and stuff like that. It's funny is you sit and talk about it on a normal day. I don't know how many carbs I eat, to be perfectly honest. Maybe,
yeah.
I mean, if I ate on a day when I ate exactly the way I meant to, which I'll take yesterday as an example. I had a coconut milk yogurt in the morning, which is probably like 9 carbs or maybe 12. I had a couple of eggs. There might be 2 carbs in eggs, but probably not. And I had some chicken later in the day. It had hot sauce, but not sugary sauce on it. I might not have had very many carbs yesterday if I'm thinking about it. But Arden had nachos last night.
Well,
Lisa, does that freak you out? My daughter had nachos for dinner last night, and her blood sugar has been 85 to 116 for the last 12 hours.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It does not. I mean, and I see Brandy eats pretty much what she wants, and she knows that
how to manage
the pre-bolus has been wonderful because that has stopped, the roller coaster spikes and all of that. And I know at one time she was, looking into the glycemic indexes and different stuff, just trying to understand the different types of carbs and understand how which carbs affected her body the most, because, that you could be 2 things with the same amount of carbs, but one would spike her sugar and the other one would not. So those type things are what I was referring to as far as just trying to, again, empower herself with knowledge to be able to control the blood sugar more and be as healthy as she possibly can. And, in hopes that anybody out there that listens to this, it might prompt them if they have had no more education from the folks that are supposed to be experts on this, that perhaps they can do a little on their own and if they don't have a CGM, get that, just be able to follow some of these things that have helped her so.
I think the greatest things that's come out of this conversation so far is that your mom, Brandy, is growing along with you in her diabetes. Like, so often when I do talk to older parents of adults who have had type 1 for a while, they'll say stuff like, well, I haven't really known much about it since they were this old or this old. But even your mom started when you were in college. Like, it would not have been crazy to me if you said, at least if you ended up saying to me, I don't really know anything about diabetes because Brandy was diagnosed in college and she's been taking care of it on her own. But instead, you went right through the whole struggle with her in the beginning. You understood the management back then. You understand how it's been changing for her. And not just like Brandy's been trying harder. Like, you're talking about things like, no, she was looking into the glycemic load and index of food so she would know how to bolus for it. Like, you really understand what she's been doing.
Yeah. But she's, again, taken it upon herself, seeing that she wasn't getting the help that you would think would be forthcoming, that they would make sure that you understood as a diabetic. So she had the initiative to do that. And because we are as close as we are, of course, she shares, that with me. And it helps me too, to feel more reassured in knowing that she's continuing to educate herself and to try to keep this as under control as you possibly can, knowing that there's all these scenarios and factors that affect the blood sugar that you have zero control over at all. And that's, if she's monitoring and managing it as close as she is and doing all that she can do, then it makes those times when it falls out of range a little bit easier to swallow and handle.
Yeah. And Brandy, this is a collection of reasons, right? You guys have good communication. You're willing to tell her stuff. She's willing to ask. She's not judging you. She's not pushing you. You set boundaries. She follows them. Like, it's working for all of those reasons. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where, too, she understands that it's kind of, as much as I don't want to ever be like, oh, hey, my name is Brandy, I have type 1 diabetes. It's one of those things where it is a part of my daily life every single day. As much as I don't want to identify as that, it still is very front and center. And so she gets that and she understands, it doesn't define you, but it is a very large part of your life. And so, when I go to the doctor, I'm like, hey, this is what was said. And, this is what we talked about. And, this is how things are going. Recently I actually have fired my endo and am getting a new one. And so, it's that the struggles of going through, with getting help and needing, someone to listen. And so she 100% understands that. And so we have kind of that open communication around everything. Just like, I find protein noodles are better. Like, I had Alfredo pasta last night that I made and I spiked. My highest was 140. So, she gets it.
Brandy, does this just apply to the diabetes, or is this your entire relationship? Like, are you guys like at each other's throats over different things, but on this you're simpatico, or is this just how your relationship works? And how much of this do you think has to do with you being an only child?
This is 100% our relationship.
Okay.
Just with everything. And so, like I said, I just moved 2 weeks ago.
Yes, to your palatial estate. I heard. Go ahead. With your,
you took
your 2 master's degrees.
I have moved like many, many times. I am a terrible, terrible person when it comes to moving. I don't know how to pack correctly. Like, my mom over the years has really had my back. Well, she wasn't able to really help with like me packing and getting the house together this time. And she felt bad about it. She was just like, I am so sorry I haven't been able to be there. Well, Monday night before we moved, she came over to my house. She packed a bag. And so she stayed with me that Monday night. And then she didn't leave until last Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So she was there for a week and a half through the move, we got every single box unpacked and everything put away. So no, this is our normal relationship.
Okay.
And yeah, it's 100% because I'm an only child, and that's that's always been our relationship.
Yeah. Lisa, are you married?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Geez.
I have 2 stepsons, 30 and 26.
Wow.
2 boys. Yeah. One's still at home with us.
And Lisa, I didn't ask, but now I'm going to ask now. How old are you?
6. I just turned 64 last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Week before last.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Wow. Well, this is terrific. And Lisa, you're married, it sounds like?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Brandy. Brandy, you're married?
No.
You said
have a
we.
boyfriend.
I was going to say, you said we are going to do a thing. Okay. So you guys.
Yeah.
You bought 21 acres with a guy who doesn't owe you money if he bails?
Well, both of our names are on the deed. Okay. So yeah.
I don't know how many boys you've met, but you might want to legal this up a little bit.
Actually, it's more him, I think. Honestly, he is a former professional basketball player that has retired and decided that he wants to have a homestead, and he has zero experience whatsoever with farm animals. I'm the one that has the experience with farm animals, so it's about to be real interesting.
I don't know if everybody heard Brandy's next humble brag that she pulled a former NBA player, but he's not NBA, Oh, basket.
He played overseas.
Oh, well, I don't care. He's still athletic and muscular, right?
I mean, sure. He's goofy.
No, I hear you. Look, I know what you're doing.
He's goofy and into anime, so I don't really know that I would count that.
Can't count all that.
He's a wonderful man. Right. I'll put it, and just what Brandy needs. She was talking earlier about not being able to pack. Brandy can be described as a collage. That's kind of been her lifestyle, kind of a collage, something I'm over here and this bright, shiny thing catches my eye. And now I'm over here. That's a part of her personality. So, the whole diabetes and her attention to it and the detail and the everything she's put into it has kind of been an exact opposite of what is her natural inclination. Mm-hmm. So that's been interesting in of itself, but it's because of the severity of the whole situation. She's learned that she has to be pretty rigid where that's concerned. And then she can just be more freestyle with the rest of her life. The fella in her life is a wonderful man who helps keep her grounded. Very nice. So it's been a good thing.
Brandy, you're not.
And I'm blessed to have had the relationship with her.
Oh yeah,
that we do have.
Oh, it sounds like it. No doubt. Brandy, are you not in the private Facebook group?
I am.
You are. Oh, it's a different last name then.
Yes. I was going to say, actually, I think it's hilarious that my mom described ADHD as a collage.
So you have ADHD?
I've never been formally diagnosed, but I mean, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I tick all the boxes. So.
Right. Okay. I tick all the boxes. I'm pretty sure.
All the boxes.
Okay. All right. So I think I understand everything. I got a pretty full picture. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should have?
Originally, I had reached out to you about coming on here because, I see so many people in the Facebook group, parents with their, oh my gosh, my kid's going off to college and, so concerned and worried. And I totally get it. But I just wanted to kind of, share an experience of I was diagnosed at college away and, had zero idea of what I was even dealing with. And we made it through.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've done astonishingly well, especially because that diagnosis, that moment of you're in school, I've helped Arden through some medical things while she's away at college, and it's not easy. And we have CGMs and text messaging and, a lot of things you didn't have 20 years ago. So, and your mom, we didn't even talk about, no lie. If 20 years ago, your mom had a 10-year-old car, right? Even the idea of hopping in the car and driving 2.5 hours somewhere, I don't think people now in a modern time realize how crappy cars used to be. Right, Lisa, it was a big deal to go on a long car journey.
It's really funny that you say that. And my mom is laughing because my mom has a 1999 Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
So,
I'm still driving the same car that I was when she was diagnosed.
Yeah, she didn't get into her like computer on wheels that doesn't let in road noise and doesn't shake and goes 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. Like, she got into a car and she's like, I hope this thing gets there. And like
exactly.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so
exactly,
it's even those little things. Like, I went and picked up food last night for Arden, and I went in, I paid with my phone at the place, and I watched these 3 young girls just think nothing of the fact that she said, how do you want to pay? And I pulled out my phone, held it up to my face, and then held it out with my hand over top of another piece of plastic to transfer $60 to her. And I said to the girls, I'm like, this is not remarkable to you at all, is it? And they were like, what, old person? And I said, I just took a magic box out of my pocket and gave the owners of this establishment $60. Like, and the one girl goes, I know what you're saying. And I was like, right? I was like, you guys don't know. And the one girl looked at me like, you gotta shut up, man. My dad says this to me at home too. like, right? And I was like, I'm like, we live in such a weird inflection point in time that there are still people alive who remember like before cell phones and the internet, and cars were not a thing. You just has no one noticed that over the last 20 years, you don't see cars broken down on the side of the road anymore. But when I grew up, the roads were littered with broken down cars. It happened all the time. And now even like they figured out how to stop that from happening with as much frequency. And anyway, I'm holding my phone up and these girls are like, you should just take this food and leave. Like just please leave us alone.
The broken down car thing though, I think that's just a northern versus southern thing because you guys deal with snow and you have to have stuff clear. If you are down here in the South, there are still cars quite often on the side of the road.
Okay, well then buy new cars. But I mean, that might be, but actually that might be a financial thing more than a weather thing. Because maybe I just live in a place where people own more newer automobiles, which is possible. I live in New Jersey. It's the home of banks and pharma companies. So people around here are doing okay. But it really is. It's just interesting. Like technology, even like, here's my point on cars. You can go buy, still today, you could go lease a car for $80 a month. That will go for 100,000 miles and generally speaking, not cost you a ton to keep it up. Like that's insane. You know what I mean? Like it really is. I don't know. Anyway, these girls were looking through me like, oh my God, this old fat guy wants to talk about my phone being magic. I just want to stare at the wall. And and I don't know. I walked outside. My daughter goes, "What took longer?" And she goes, "What happened in there?" And I said, "I was trying to explain to the girls how the phones." And she's like, "Dad, just leave them alone." And I was like, "But they don't know." And she goes, "They also don't care." And I was like, "Gotcha."
That part.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys were terrific. I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It really was. Hold on 1 second for me, okay?
Okay.
Come meet me live in Orlando, Florida, September 14th, 2024. Go to touchedbytype1.org. Go to their programs tab, click on annual event, and right there you'll get your absolutely free tickets. All you have to do is register, and we can take a picture together, or I'll talk about diabetes stuff, or something like that will happen in Orlando. And if I suck, who cares? You'll be in Orlando. It's fantastic there. Very sunny. Very nice. I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and invite you to go to eversensecgm.com/juicebox to learn more about this terrific device. You can head over now and just absorb everything that the website has to offer, and that way you'll know if Eversense feels right for you. eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Get rid of that FOMO, baby. Get rid of it by getting yourself a beautiful Omnipod 5, omnipod.com/juicebox. There's no reason for you to be wanting and wishing and hoping when there's a link that all you have to do is click on. omnipod.com/juicebox. Go tubeless. Get rid of that FOMO. If you or a loved one was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and you're looking for some fresh perspective, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to start. That series is with myself and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a CDCES, a registered dietitian, and a type 1 for over 35 years. And in the Bold Beginnings series, Jenny and I are going to answer the questions that most people have after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. The series begins at episode 698 in your podcast player, or you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on Bold Beginnings in the menu. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.